The horse destined for sacrifice was released into the wild, its majestic form symbolizing the purity and strength that the king embodied. Vesa, the revered sage, and author of the Vedas had decreed that the horse be let loose to roam freely, a testament to the freedom and power of the divine. Meanwhile, Arjuna, the mighty warrior, son of Kunti, stood ready to embark on his own journey, clad in a black deer's skin and carrying his trusty bow Gandhava. He shone like a second Prajapati, the creator god, as he prepared to follow the sacred horse, the crowd that had gathered to witness. This momentous occasion was so vast that it seemed to create a fire of its own, with people from all walks of life pressing forward to catch a glimpse of the hero. As Arjuna drew his bow and prepared for departure, the air was filled with cheers and blessings from the assembled throng. "May you return safely, O Bharata," they cried, their voices carrying on the wind as he rode out of Hastinapura towards the unknown. The wise words of Yajnavalkya's disciple who had accompanied Arjuna echoed through the air. "May all dangers flee from your path, O hero," with the sacred horse leading the way. Arjuna set forth into a world filled with wonder and danger. He traversed lands already conquered by his brothers, Panda's sons, their prowess in battle having spread far and wide. As he journeyed on, the mighty warrior encountered countless kings, each one eager to test their mettle against him. From the snow-capped mountains of the north to the scorching deserts of the east, Arjuna fought battles that would be etched into the annals of his story. The armies that clashed with him were formidable, comprising brave warriors from diverse lands, Haratus, Yevanus, and Lekakes. Yet Arjuna stood unwavering, his Gandhava bow a beacon of hope as he battled on, his name becoming. In the midst of a grand battle, Arjuna, donning his diadem, stood tall against the sons and grandsons of the Trigartas. These mighty warriors, known for their unwavering ferocity, had been seeking to capture the magnificent steed intended for sacrifice, which had wandered into their realm with mail-clad bodies and quivers full of arrows. They surrounded Arjuna's prized horse, drawn by well-decked horses. As Arjuna reflected on their endeavor, he tried to reason with them, using conciliatory speeches to dissuade the Trigartas from continuing their pursuit. However, his words fell on deaf ears. Disregarding his message, they launched a barrage of arrows at him, testing his mettle as a warrior. Arjuna, known for his unwavering courage and unshakable resolve, resisted their onslaught with ease. With a gentle smile, he addressed the Trigartas. "This, the unrighteous one's life is a benefit that should not be thrown away." His words were laced with compassion, but they only served to further infuriate his opponents. As Arjuna remembered the commands of his brother Yudhishthira, who had explicitly forbidden him from slaying Kshatriyas whose kin had fallen in battle before, he implored the Trigartas to cease their aggression. Yet they refused to heed his words, and the battle raged on. The king of the Trigartas, Shriyavarman, proved to be a formidable foe, piercing Arjuna with hundreds of arrows. The other great bowmen who followed him unleashed a torrent of arrows at Dhananjaya, but he cut through them with ease, his bow singing as it released countless shafts. Among the Trigarta warriors was Ketuvarman, the younger brother of Shriyavarman, who fought valiantly to protect his kin. However, Arjuna's prowess proved too great, and he slew Ketuvarman with many sharp-pointed arrows. As the young warrior fell, Dritavarman, another mighty Kar warrior, rushed towards Arjuna on his chariot, showering him with a perfect downpour of arrows. Arjuna was taken aback by Dritavarman's skill and agility, but he refused to take the young warrior's life. Instead, he fought mildly with him, admiring his valor and skill. The Trigartas, however, continued their relentless assault, and Arjuna eventually fell prey to Dritavarman's blazing arrow. Pierced in the hand by the arrow, Arjuna became stunned, and his bow Gandhava fell from his grasp. The mighty arm Dhananjaya was momentarily incapacitated, but he quickly regained his composure and took up his bow once more. With a fierce determination, he unleashed. In the realm of Pradyutisha, a majestic sacrificial steed had wandered into the kingdom. The news of its arrival reached by Gadata's son Vajradata, who was renowned for his bravery in battle. He rode out of his city to confront the steed and claim it as his own. However, Arjuna, the mighty warrior of the Pandavas, had been tracking the steed with his Gandhava bow. As soon as he spotted Vajradata, he swiftly drew his bowstring and shot a barrage of arrows at the princess. Son of Vajradata was taken aback by the speed and accuracy of Arjuna's shots, and in a moment of panic, he released the steed and fled back to his city. But Vajradata, fueled by pride and a desire for victory, refused to give up. He donned his armor, mounted his majestic elephant, which was as white as snow and had temples that shone like polished gemstones, and set out to challenge Arjuna. Once more as the two warriors clashed, the air was filled with the sound of clashing steel, and the scent of sweat and blood. Vajradhara hurled a multitude of arrows at Arjuna, each one imbued with the power of fire. But the Pandava warrior was unfazed with his Gandiva bow, singing its deadly song. He cut down Vajradhara's arrows in midair, some into two pieces, and others into three. Enraged by this display of skill, Vajradhara sent a fresh wave of arrows at Arjuna. But the Pandava warrior was ready for him with an ease that belied his rage. He shot back a hail of arrows, each one tipped with golden wings, and Vajradhara felt himself being pierced by their deadly force. The prince fell to the ground. But even as he lay there, he did not lose consciousness. Undeterred, Vajradhara remounted his elephant and continued to fight, sending arrow after arrow at Arjuna in a desperate bid for victory. But Arjuna was relentless, his arrows flying like blazing flames of fire, each one landing with precision and force. The mighty elephant, pierced by these arrows, began to bleed profusely, its body resembling a mountain springing forth from the earth. As the battle raged on, it seemed as though the very fabric of reality was torn apart by the clash of steel, and the sound of drums beating out a warlike rhythm. In the end it was Vajradhara's elephant that bore the brunt of Arjuna's wrath, its body covered in blood like a mountain discarding rills of water colored with red chalk. The prince himself lay still on the ground, his consciousness slowly fading away as the battle came to an end. In the midst of a fierce battle, Vasampayana recounted to the chief of the Paratas the tale of valor and strategy he encountered between Arjuna, the renowned warrior, and Vajradhara. The prince of Prajoyasha was likened to the legendary fight between Indra and the serpent Vritra. For 3 days the armies clashed in a frenzy of steel and fury. But it wasn't until the 4th day that Vajradhara's elephant, a behemoth of strength and ferocity, entered the fray. As the elephant, its massive body glistening with dew, charged towards Arjuna, Vajradhara let out a thunderous loud, "Wait, wait, O Arjuna!" He exclaimed, "You shall not escape me with your life slaying. You will be my duty to fulfill the water right of my sire." The prince's words were laced with venom and a deep-seated anger that seemed to fuel his every action. Vajradhara urged his elephant forward, its massive body propelling itself towards Arjuna. Like a force of nature, the air was filled with the sound of drums and trumpets. As the beast charged, its trunk raised high in the air, ready to strike, Arjuna stood firm, his Gandiva bow at the ready, his eyes fixed intently on the approaching elephantus. The elephant drew closer. It unleashed a torrent of juice from its trunk, drenching Arjuna with a deluge of liquid that seemed to come from the very heavens themselves. The prince's face was set in determination as he stood his ground against the onslaught, his bow singing out as he fired arrow after arrow at the beast. The elephant stumbled, its massive body pierced by numerous arrows, but it refused to yield. Vajradhara, enraged and frustrated, shot whetted arrows at Arjuna himself. But the prince dodged each blow with ease, his movements swift and deadly. The battle raged on, with neither side giving quarter. Finally, in a flash of insight, Arjuna saw an opportunity to strike. He drew back his bowstring and fired a shaft that seemed to blaze like a flame from the very depths of the earth. The arrow struck true, piercing the elephant's vitals and sending it crashing to the ground with a deafening roar as the beast lay motionless on the earth. Vajradhara emerged from its side, his face twisted in rage and disappointment. Arjuna approached him, his voice calm and measured. "Do not fear, O king," he said. "My brother Yudhishthira has commanded me to disable our enemies, not slay them. You have been defeated, but you will live to fight another day." Vajradhara's face fell as he realized the extent of his defeat. He nodded slowly, a hint of understanding in. The sun was shining brightly over the lands of the Saindevas as Arjuna, the diadem-decked warrior of the Pandu clan, entered their territories. The Kshatriyas, still reeling from the devastating battle on Kurukshetra, could not bear the thought of another great warrior in their midst. Their leader Vivatsu advanced against Arjuna with a fierce determination, armed with his bow and seated upon his sacrificial steedus. The battle raged on. The Saindeva warriors showered Arjuna with arrows proclaiming their names and families. As they struck, the air was filled with the sound of clashing steel, and a scent of blood and sweat hung heavy over the battlefield. Arjuna, the slayer of the Navahekavikas and the destroyer of the Samasthakas, fought valiantly, But he was vastly outnumbered. The Saint-Ava warriors surrounded him on all sides, their chariots and horses forming a wall of steel that seemed impenetrable. Arjuna's Gandhava bow shook with each impact as arrow after arrow struck its mark. The once mighty warrior began to tire, his movements slowing as the arrows rained down upon him. The three worlds watched in horror as Arjuna stumbled and fell, overwhelmed by the sheer force of the Saint-Ava attack. The sun itself seemed to falter, his radiance dimmed by the darkness that had fallen over the battlefield. Rahu, the serpent demon, swallowed up both the sun and moon, plunging the world into chaos. Meteors streaked across the sky, striking the solar disk with a deafening crash. Kailasa, the prince of mountains, trembled beneath their impact. The seven celestial rishis and the other rishis of heaven watched in terror as the very fabric of the universe seemed to unravel. But Arjuna was not defeated. Yet as he lay stunned on the ground, his bow Gandhava fell from his relaxed grip. But it was a mere illusion, for when the celestial rishis began their silent recitations, imbuing the battlefield with their collective energy, Arjuna's strength surged back to life with renewed vigor. Arjuna drew his celestial bow, its tone echoing through the land like the sound of a mighty machine, like Kurandara pouring rain. He unleashed a torrent of arrows upon his foes, piercing them with deadly precision. The Saint-Ava warriors fled in terror, their cries and lamentations echoing across the battlefield as Arjuna moved among them with the speed and ferocity of a fiery wheelus. The dust settled. The Kirava Hera stood victorious, his bow still singing its triumphant song as he pierced the hearts of his enemies. Like the autumnal sun dispersing the clouds, Arjuna had shattered the darkness. The sun beat down upon the battlefield as Arjuna, a mighty warrior, stood firm like a mountain. The Saint-Ava warriors, fueled by rage and determination, launched wave after wave of arrows at him. But Arjuna, lolling at their futile efforts, addressed them with gentle words. Fight to your best, but know that a great danger awaits. You all I shall soon crush your pride. The battle raged on. Arjuna's thoughts turned to his brother Yudhishthira's words of caution. Do not slay those Kshatriyas who come against you in battle. Reflecting on these words, Arjuna decided to spare the Saint-Ava warriors. He called out to them, saying, I do not wish to slay you. If one among you says he has been vanquished by me and acknowledges defeat, I shall spare him. The Saint-Avas, however, were too proud to yield. They continued to fight with all their might, shoring Arjuna with arrows as sharp as snake's fangs. But the wielder of Gandhava was unfazed, cutting down their arrows with his whetted shafts and piercing each warrior with a single shot. As the battle reached its climax, the Saint-Ava warriors remembered that Arjuna had killed their king Jayadratha. In revenge, they hurled darts and javelins at him with great force. But Arjuna was unstoppable, cutting down their weapons. Before they could reach him, his anger grew, and he felled many of the warriors who dared to rush at him. In the midst of this chaos, Dasala, the queen of the Saint-Avas, arrived on the battlefield with her grandson in her arms. The child was the son of Shura, Jayadratha's son, and had been orphaned by Arjuna's actions. Dasala begged Arjuna to show mercy to the child, reminding him that he was a Kshatriya who should know duty towards his own kind. Arjuna, moved by Dasala's words, cast aside his bow and welcomed her with open arms. He listened as she told him of Shura's tragic fate, how he had died in grief upon hearing of Jayadratha's death. Arjuna's heart was heavy with sorrow, but Dasala's words struck a chord within him. He remembered the teachings of his brother Yudhishthira and the values of Kshatriya duty. He realized that he should show mercy to the child who had lost his father and family in the war. Arjuna's anger subsided, and he became inclined to make peace with a heavy heart. Dasala left the battlefield accompanied by her warriors. She worshipped Arjuna as a god and returned to her palace, leaving behind a van. In the kingdom of Manipura, a young prince named Vapruvahana was eager to prove himself as a worthy warrior. He had heard that his father Arjuna, the great hero and one of the Pandava brothers, had arrived within their dominions. However, instead of meeting him with honor and respect, Vapruvahana chose to sneak into the kingdom disguised as a Brahmana, accompanied by a group of priests and treasurer. Arjuna, however, was not fooled by his son's ruse. Recognizing the young prince beneath the disguise, he rebuked him for abandoning his Kshatriya duties and seeking to receive him peacefully without engaging in battle. Vapruvahana's stepmother Ulupai, the daughter of a snake king, saw her son's distress and came up with an idea. You are my son Vapruvahana, she said, and I am your mother. Fight. your father Arjuna, who is the greatest warrior in our kingdom. If you do this, you will earn great merit and make your father proud. Yulupai's words ignited a fire within Vafthrudhana, and he decided to face his father in battle. The two warriors clashed on the battlefield. Their fight was like nothing anyone had ever seen before. Arjuna, with his Gandavat, bow shot arrow after arrow at Vafthrudhana, but the young prince dodged and waved, using his own broad-headed shafts to deflect his father's attacks. The battle raged on for what seemed like hours, with neither side giving an inch. Finally, in a moment of boyish bravery, Vafthrudhana pierced Arjuna through the shoulder with a straight shaft. The arrow, shot from a distance, penetrated deep into the earth and caused Arjuna to stumble. Arjuna regained consciousness and praised his son for his bravery, but he was not one to be defeated so easily. He shot another shower of arrows at Vafthrudhana, who countered with his own shafts, cutting some in twain and others into three parts. The fight continued until Arjuna's standard, adorned with gold and resembling a golden palmyra, was cut down by Partha's excellent shafts, the son of Pandu. Then slew Vafthrudhana's steeds, leaving the young prince enraged and fighting on foot. In the end, it was Vafthrudhana who thought his father was no longer able to face him, and launched a final attack, piercing Arjuna through the breast with a wedge shaft. The arrow reached Arjuna's vital organs, causing him great pain, and he fell down in a swoon on the earth. Vafthrudhana too was overcome by grief and exhaustion, and he fell to the ground beside. In a desolate field of battle, Queen Chitrainedda sat beside her husband's lifeless body, her eyes like lotus petals brimming with tears. Her son Dhananjaya, also known as Arjuna, lay nearby, his own life slipping away from him. The queen's grief was palpable as she addressed Yulupai, the daughter of the snake chief and her co-wife. To Arjuna, "Why do you not grieve, Yulupai?" Chitrainedda asked, her voice trembling with sorrow. "Your husband has been slain by my son in battle. If Dhananjaya has offended against you in any way, I beg of you, forgive him. Revive that hero, righteous lady. You are conversant with piety and known for your virtues over the three worlds." Chitrainedda's words were laced with desperation as she implored Yulubai to revive her husband. She spoke of their polygamous relationship ordained by the Supreme Ordainer himself, and how it was an eternal and unchangeable one. The queen begged Yulubai not to harbor thoughts of vengeance, but instead attend to their relationship, and let their union be made true. As Chitrainedda continued to lament, her son Vafthrudhana regained consciousness. He saw his mother sitting beside his father's body, her face etched with sorrow. The young prince was overcome with grief, realizing that he had slain the mighty Arjuna in battle. "The heart of this princess seems to be very hard," Vafthrudhana said, addressing Chitrainedda. "It does not break, even at the sight of her mighty arm and broad-chested husband lying dead on the ground." He begged his mother to forgive him for taking his father's life, promising to wander over the earth as a sinful wretch if he could not make amends. Chitrainedda, however, was resolute. She vowed to sit and pray, a state of deep meditation and self-mortification, until her husband rose from the dead or she herself cast off her life-breath. Yulupai, taking pity on the royal couple, revealed that Arjuna had not been vanquished by Vafthrudhana, but was instead an illusion created to test the young prince's prowess. The daughter of the snake chief produced a celestial gem with the power to revive the dead. She placed it on Arjuna's chest and spoke words of reassurance to Vafthrudhana. "Rise up, O son. Do not grieve. Jishnu has not been vanquished by thee." As the gem's power took effect, Arjuna's body began to stir with his father revived. Vafthrudhana was overcome with relief and gratitude towards Yulupai. He vowed to make amends for his actions, acknowledging that as the battle-scared warrior Arjuna stood firm, his eyes scanning the horizon for a sign of enemy forces, a sudden commotion broke out among the troops. A beautiful woman, her long hair flowing like the wind, emerged from the midst of the soldiers. Her name was Yulupai, daughter-in-law of the Kuru dynasty and mother of the young prince Vafthrudhana. Yulupai approached Arjuna with a gentle smile, her eyes sparkling with kindness. "What business brings you here, O mighty arm, Dhananjaya?" she asked, her voice like music to his ears. "And what is the cause of your presence on this battlefield, where my son Vafthrudhana stands by your side?" Arjuna's brow furrowed in curiosity as he replied, "I hope you have not come here with any ill intentions towards me or my son. We have not done anything to offend you, nor has Chitrainedda, the prince of snakes, Done you any wrong? Rupai's smile deepened as she began to speak in a low, melodious tone. No, Arjuna, I have come here for your good. You see, many years ago, when you slew Bhishma, the son of Santanu, I was present on the battlefield of Vasis. Those powerful deities cursed you for that act, saying that if you did not expiate your sin, you would fall into hell. Arjuna's eyes widened in surprise as Yulabai continued her tale. But I, with my knowledge of the ancient Lord, discovered a way to lift the curse. I had to bring about your downfall at the hands of your own son Vairuvahana, and so it has come to pass that he stands before you now ready to vanquish his father in battle. As Yulabai finished speaking, Arjuna's face lit up with understanding and gratitude. All this you have done for my little goddess, he said, bowing his head in reverence. I am forever in your debt. Yulabai smiled again, her eyes shining with compassion. You are free from the curse of the Vasis, Arjuna. Your son has lifted it through his bravery and loyalty to you. As the two warriors spoke, Vairuvahana approached them, his eyes brimming with tears. Father, he said, his voice trembling with emotion, I will certainly go to the great horse sacrifice in Kshetra as you have commanded. But please enter our city first and let your two wives come with you. Arjuna's face softened as he replied, My son, I am bound by my vow to follow this sacrificial horse wherever it may lead. I will not be able to rest in your city until the end of. In the vast expanse of the earth, bounded by the majestic Ocean, a sacrificial steed wandered freely, its path unencumbered. As it roamed, it turned towards the city, known as Hastinapura, named after the mighty elephant. Following closely behind this magnificent creature was Arjuna, adorned with a diadem and renowned for his valor. Together they journeyed towards the Kuru capital. As fate way of it, their path led them to the city of Rajagraya, where the heroic son of Sahadeva Mahesanda ruled with great zeal, observant of the duties expected of a Kshatriya. He challenged the steed and Arjuna to battle with his chariot at the ready, equipped with bow and arrows and surrounded by his loyal attendants. Mahesanda charged towards Dhananjaya, prince driven by an impulsive spirit, and without any skill in battle, he exclaimed, the steed defying Mahabharat seems to move about, protected only by women. I shall take away the horse. Do those strive to free him? Arjuna, with a smile on his face, replied, to resist one who obstructs me is the vow cast upon me by my eldest brother. Without doubt, O king, this is known to thee. Do thus strike me, for I have no injury. Thus addressed Mahesanda, unleashed a torrent of arrows at Arjuna, likened to Indra's downpour of rain. But the son of Pandu, with his excellent bow Gandharva, deflected each arrow with ease. Enraged by this turn of events, Mahesanda shot blazing arrows that resembled snakes with fiery mouths, targeting Arjuna's flag car and attendants. Yet sparing the prince's body, Arjuna continued to dodge these attacks. Partha, capable of shooting his bow with both hands, displayed incredible prowess, and he batted away Mahesanda's arrows like a skilled player, deflecting balls. A game the ruler of Magadha, confident in his own abilities, continued to shoot arrow after arrow at Arjuna, but the latter remained unscathed. The battle raged on. Arjuna's anger grew, and he drew his bow with great force with a razor-headed shaft. He slew Mahesanda's steeds and struck down his charioteer. Then with a swift motion he cut off the prince's large and beautiful bow, followed by his leathern fence, cutting down the flag and its staff. Arjuna caused it to fall to the ground. Mahesanda, severely afflicted and deprived of his steed's bow and trevor, took up a mass adorned with bright gold and rushed towards Arjuna, the son of Kunti, with many shafts. In the land of Magadha, where the mighty rivers flow, King Vaisampana spoke of the great exploits of Arjuna. The son of Kunti, the ruler of Magadha, impressed by Arjuna's prowess, had him proceed southward with a white steed yoked to his chariot. As he journeyed along, following the sacred path marked by the sacrificial steed, Arjuna turned towards the city of Chidai, known as the Oyster, due to its majestic beauty. Upon arriving in Chidai, Arjuna encountered Sarava, the son of Sisipala, who was renowned for his great strength. The two engaged in battle, and though Sarava fought valiantly, he ultimately worshipped Arjuna with due honors. With this encounter behind him, Arjuna continued on his journey to the realms of Kesis, Angus, Kosalas, Karatis, and Tanganus, receiving reverence from all who met him. As he traveled further south, Arjuna arrived in the land of Desarna, where Chitrangada, a powerful ruler with unmatched strength, recited a fierce battle entered between these two mighty warriors, with Arjuna emerging victorious, defeated. But unbroken Chitrangada was brought under Arjuna's sway. The diadem Dekatera then proceeded to the dominions of Nishada, where Ekalavia's son ruled as king. The battle that took place between Arjuna and the Nishadas was so intense that it sent shivers down the spines of all who witnessed it. Though unvanquished in combat, Arjuna ultimately defeated the Nishada, king freeing him from his obstinacy, having subjugated Ikalia's son. Arjuna continued on his journey to the southern Ocean. As he ventured into new lands, battles raged between him and various tribes, the Dravidas and Trismeshekas and hillmen of Ko. However, Arjuna conquered these tribes without resorting to excessive force. Guided by his trusty steed, Arjuna arrived at Gokarna and then proceeded to Prahasa. It was there that he received the warm welcome of King Agrisna, who forbade his son's attempts to harm the sacrificial horse, the ruler of Vrishis, and Anakas, accompanied by Vasudeva, Arjuna's maternal uncle, joyfully met the Kuru hero and honored him with due rites. With their permission, Arjuna proceeded towards Gauravati, a beautiful sea, protected by the heroes of the Vrishite clan. The Yadeva youths had attempted to force themselves upon the sacrificial steed, but King Agrisna's timely intervention put an end to their plans. In the midst of a grand campaign, Vasampayana recounts the tale of Arjuna's confrontation with the Gandharas led by their mighty warrior, the son of Sakanai. They marched towards Arjuna with a large force adorned with flags and banners, seeking vengeance for the death of their king. Their army was a formidable sight to behold, with elephants, horses, and cars at its disposal. The Gandhara warriors were determined to exact revenge on Partha, who had been forbidden by Yudhishthira from engaging in battle. However, Arjuna's words of peace fell on deaf ears, as the Gandharas, fueled by rage and a desire for retribution, rushed towards him. The unyielding Vivatsa, with his righteous soul, attempted to reason with them once more, but they refused to listen. Undeterred, he addressed them in sweet tones, urging them to desist from their wrath. Yet they continued to surround the sacrificial steed. This was when Arjuna's patience finally wore thin. With a fierce determination burning within him, Arjuna began to shoot arrow after arrow from his trusty Gandava, while the razor-like heads of these arrows blazed with splendor as they sliced through the air, cutting down many of the Gandhara warriors in their path. As the battle raged on, the Gandharas grew increasingly afflicted, their fear taking hold in the desperate bid to escape the carnage. They released the sacred horse and retreated from the battlefield. However, their brave warriors continued to surround Arjuna, refusing to yield. The son of Pandu, fueled by his unyielding energy, felled many more Gandharas, naming each one as he struck them down. Just as it seemed that all was lost for the Gandhara army, their king, the son of Sakanai, emerged from the fray, determined to resist Arjuna. The Kuru hero, with his unparalleled prowess in battle, stood firm against the onslaught, but even he could not withstand the might of Partha. As the Gandharas continued to fall around him, their mother, filled with fear and concern for her son, emerged from the city bearing an excellent Arghaya offering. She implored her brave warrior to cease fighting and gratified Jisha's benevolence by showing kindness towards the Gandhara king. Moved by compassion, Vivatsa comforted the son of Sakanai, reminding him that they were brothers and that he had spared his life for the sake of their shared heritage. He cautioned the king not to let hostilities continue, lest it lead to further bloodshed. And so, with a newfound sense of understanding, the Gandharas laid down their arms, and the war came to an end. The son of Sakanai, realizing the gravity of his actions, accepted Vivatsa's words and agreed. In the kingdom of Hastinapura, King Yudhishthira was preparing for a grand sacrifice known as the horse sacrifice. The ritual was said to bring prosperity and good fortune to the land. As the king busied himself with the preparations, he received news that his brother Arjuna had returned from his journey with the sacrificial horse, and news brought immense joy to the king's heart, for it meant that the time for the sacrifice had finally arrived. He summoned his brothers Bhema and Nakula and Sahadeva to inform them of the good tidings. The king instructed Bhema to find the suitable location for the sacrifice, where they could lay out the sacrificial compound and construct buildings. Bhema set out with a large contingent of men well versed in the art of laying out sacred grounds and constructing temples. They traveled far and wide, searching for the perfect spot, until finally they found a beautiful area that met their requirements. The king's brother then caused it to be measured out and leveled, adorning it with jewels, gems, and gold. As the preparations neared completion, the king dispatched messengers to invite great kings from across the land to attend the sacrifice. Many monarchs responded to the invitation, bringing with them gifts of precious gems, female slaves, horses, and weapons. The sound of their arrival was like thunder, and the kingdom was filled with excitement. The chief of the Paratus, King Yudhishthira, welcomed his guests with open arms, assigning them luxurious pavilions to reside in, along with food and drink fit for the gods. The king also provided stables filled with corn, sugarcane, and milk for their animals. As the day of the sacrifice approached, a large gathering of munis or sages arrived at the kingdom, accompanied by their disciples. King Yudhishthira received them all with great reverence, following them to their assigned pavilions with the arrangements complete. The mechanics and engineers informed the king that everything was ready for the sacrifice. The king's joy knew no bounds as he realized that his grand vision had finally come to fruition. He became filled with a sense of accomplishment and pride in his brothers, who had worked tirelessly to bring this day about. As the great sacrifice commenced, many learned dialecticians gathered to engage in philosophical debates, eager to outdo one another in their arguments. The invited kings beheld the grand preparations rivaling those made by the gods themselves. They saw rows of triumphal arches made of gold, beds and seats adorned with precious stones, and crowds of men engaged in various sports. The invited kings were amazed by the sheer scale and opulence of the sacrifice, which seemed to stretch on forever. They beheld jars, vessels, cauldrons, jugs, and lids, all made of gold, as well as sacrificial steaks. The sun was setting over the kingdom, casting a warm orange glow over the bustling streets of Hastinapura. King Yudhishthira, son of Pandu, stood on the balcony of his palace, surveying the scene below. He had just finished addressing them at his powerful brother to ensure that proper honors were paid to the visiting kings who had arrived for his sacrifices. He turned back into the palace. He spotted Govinda, also known as Krishna, accompanied by the Vrishnis and Danekas, including Valadeva, Udana, Pradhyana, Gada, Niza the Samo, and Kritavarman, Bhima, with his mighty energy, offered them reverential worship, and they entered the palaces adorned with gems. Krishna then had a conversation with Yudhishthira about Arjuna, who had been emaciated due to many battles. Krishna spoke of an agent he had sent from Dwaraka, who had seen Arjuna, and informed him that the prince was near. He advised Yudhishthira to complete his horse sacrifice. Yudhishthira's eyes lit up with joy at the news, and he asked Krishna about Arjuna's words. Krishna explained that Arjuna had said that many kings would come to the sacrifice, and they should be honored accordingly. He also mentioned that Yudhishthira should prevent a carnage similar to the one that occurred during the Rajeshriya sacrifices. They spoke. Draupadi, the princess of Panchala, looked on with anger in her eyes, for she could not bear the thought of any fault being ascribed to Arjuna. Krishna, however, approved of her love and devotion towards Arjuna. Meanwhile, Bhima and the other Kurus were discussing Arjuna's triumphs when envoy arrived from the prince himself. The messenger bowed his head in reverence and informed Yudhishthira that Arjuna had arrived safely. Tears of joy filled the king's eyes as he received the news, and the second day a loud din was heard as Arjuna entered the kingdom, accompanied by his horse. The dust raised by the hoofs looked beautiful, like that of the celestial steed Kesravas, as he walked towards the palace. The citizens hailed him with gladdening words, praising his feat in causing the horse to wander over the whole earth and vanquishing all the kings in battle. Arjuna entered the sacrificial compound, surrounded by his brothers Krishna and their allies. He was greeted by Yudhishthira, who placed Dhritarashtra in the van, followed by Krishna, Emma, and others. Arjuna saluted his father's feet, then Yudhishthira's, and finally worshipped. The grand horse sacrifice ceremony, a majestic event that would be etched in the annals of his story for generations to come. It was a day of great pomp and circumstance, with the Pandavas, led by King Yudhishthira, determined to perform this sacred ritual according to the ancient scriptures. The priests, skilled in the intricacies of Vedic rituals, began by sacrificing the magnificent steed that had wandered across the world. The animal was cut into pieces, and its marrow was cooked with due rites. Draupadi, wise and intelligent, sat near the divided animal as the priests worked their magic. The aroma of the cooking meat wafted through the air, a potent symbol of purification, and we knew as the sacrifice progressed. King Yudhishthira and his brothers Arjuna, Nakula, and Sahadeva approached the sacrificial fire. They inhaled the cleansing smoke, their minds filled with devotion and reverence
for the ritual. The priests then poured the remaining lambs of the steed into the flames, completing the sacrifice. The illustrious Vyasa, author of the sacred texts, eulogized King Yudhishthira's dedication to the ritual in a gesture of generosity. The king gave away 1,000 crores of gold and nishkas to the Brahmanas and gifted the entire earth. To his father-in-law Vyasa, however, when Vyasa returned the earth to Yudhishthira, the king refused to accept it, stating that the Dakshina ordained for the horse sacrifice was indeed the earth. He invited the Brahmanas to divide the land among themselves, following the Kshatrotra sacrifice tradition. The king's brothers and Draupadi concurred with his decision. The news of Yudhishthira's selfless gesture sent shockwaves throughout the assembly. An invisible voice go through the heavens, proclaiming, "Excellent, excellent." The murmurs of approval from the Brahmanas filled the air. Krishna, the island-born sage, was overjoyed by Yudhishthira's generosity and praised him for his selflessness. He accepted the earth on behalf of the Pandavas, but then returned it to Yudhishthira, saying that the king should give gold to the Brahmanas. Instead, Yudhishthira, with the heart full of devotion, gave away millions of golden coins, tripling the Dakshina ordained for the horse sacrifice. The wealth was divided among the Brahmanas, who were overjoyed by their good fortune. After distributing the remaining treasures, the Pandavas dismissed the assembled kings, and the ritual came to a close. The grand ceremony drew to an end. King Yudhishthira emerged as a paragon of generosity. His heart, filled with the joy of giving the sacrifice, was a testament. In the midst of a grand horse sacrifice, King Janamejaya sought to hear a tale of wonder from Vasampayana. The sage's eyes sparkled as he began to recount an extraordinary incident that had transpired during a similar sacrifice in the past. It was said that after the Brahmanas' kinsmen and relatives had been gratified with their rightful shares, a majestic blue-eyed mongoose appeared on the scene. His body glistened with gold on one side, and his voice boomed like thunder as he declared, "This great sacrifice is not equal to a prasta of powdered barley given away by a liberal Brahmana." Observing the Ancha vow in Kurukshetra, the assembly of Brahmanas was taken aback by the mongoose's words. They approached him with curiosity and asked about his origins, powers, and wisdom. The mongoose smiled, his eyes glinting with a celestial light as he began to narrate a tale that would change their understanding forever. In the land of Kurukshetra, where righteous souls dwell, there lived a Brahmana named the story takes a momentary pause, allowing the listener's imagination to paint a vivid picture. This noble soul had dedicated himself to observing the Ancha vow, living like a parrot and eating at the sixth division of the day. His wife, son, and daughter-in-law shared his dedication, and together they endured the hardships of famines. The days passed, their hunger grew, but they persevered in their penances. One day, after months of suffering, the Brahmana managed to collect a prasta of barley. With it, he made sechu for himself and his family. Just as they were about to sit down to eat, a wary guest appeared at their doorstep. The Brahmanas welcomed him with open hearts, offering him arjaya, water for washing his feet, kusa, grass for his seat, and clean sechu acquired through lawful means. The guest accepted the gift, but his hunger remained unfulfilled. Moved by compassion, the Brahmana's wife suggested that her share be given to the guest, so he might be satisfied. As the guest ate the offered barley, his hunger was still not appeased. The Brahmana then realized that their own sacrifice paled in comparison to the selfless act of a liberal Brahmana who had given away a prasta of powdered barley with pure intentions. Moved by this realization, half of the mongoose's body transformed into gold. The assembly of Brahmanas listened with rapt attention as the mongoose concluded his tale, their minds reeling from the magnitude of the story. They realized that true sacrifice lay not in grand gestures, but in the selfless acts of kindness and compassion that touched the hearts of all beings involved. The mongoose's words lingered in the air, a reminder of the transformative power of devotion, charity, and love. The sun was setting over the kingdom of Hastinapura as Janamejaya, the wise king, sat in contemplation. He pondered the nature of sacrifice and its rewards, seeking guidance from the revered sage Vasampayana. O puissant Rishi, Janamejaya said, "Kings are attached to sacrifices, great rishis to penances, and learned Brahmanas to tranquility and self-restraint. I am convinced that nothing can compare with the fruits of sacrifices. Vasampayana,
nodded in agreement, his eyes twinkling with ancient wisdom. He began to recount a tale of Sakra, the mighty King Indra, who had performed a grand sacrifice with gifts in profusion. The Ritvajas and Brahmanas recited sacred mantras as they poured libations of clarified butter. But just as the ritual reached its climax, the great rishis felt compassion for the animals about to be slaughtered. Behold, O Sakra, they said, this method of sacrifice is not auspicious. It indicates your unacquaintance with true sacrifice. The deity's pride and stupefaction clouded his judgment, and he refused their words of wisdom. A great dispute arose among the ascetics as to whether sacrifices should be performed with mobile creatures or immobile objects. The rishis then approached King Vasa, seeking his Vedic declaration on the matter. Without hesitation, the wise king answered, sacrifices may be performed with whichever object is ready. But alas, his words were soon proven false, for he had to enter the nether regions as punishment for his deceit. Vaisampayana's tale continued, cautioning against performing sacrifices with wealth acquired through unrighteous means. Those who do so risk losing their gifts and never earning true merit in the afterlife. In contrast, men of penance who give away grains of corn or other simple offerings acquire great merit and proceed to heaviness. The king listened intently. Vaisampayana spoke of ancient kings like Visvamitra, Asita, Janaka, Hechesna, Ashtasna, and Sindhu-Witva, who had attained high success through their gifts and penances. The wise sage concluded by saying that those who purify themselves through righteousness and follow the path of penance will ultimately proceed to heaven. Janamjaya's eyes widened as he absorbed Vaisampayana's words, his mind filled with a deeper understanding of the nature of sacrifice and its rewards. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, the king felt a sense of reverence for the ancient traditions that had guided his ancestors. He knew that he too must walk this path, striving for righteousness and compassion in all aspects of life. The sun was setting over the great sacrifice of Agastya, a revered rishi who had devoted himself to 12 years of penance. His was a gathering of wise men and ascetics, each one renowned for their mastery over their senses and their unwavering commitment to the path of righteousness. Among them were those who lived on roots and fruits, others who subsisted solely on the rays of the moon, and still more who only ate food offered by others with reverence. As the rite progressed, a sense of unease began to settle over the assembly. The rains had ceased, and the land was parched and dry. This Agastya said, one of the rishis engaged in sacrifices, making gifts of food with heart, purged of pride and vanity. But how will food grow? This sacrifice of the rishi, Brahmanas, is great and extends for 12 years. The deity will not pour rain for these 12 years. Agastya, unperturbed by the doubts of his companions, spoke words that would soon change the course of events. If Vasava does not pour rain for those 12 years, he said, I shall then perform the mental sacrifice. Even this is the eternal ordinance. His words were a testament to his unshakable faith in the power of penance and his unwavering commitment to the path of righteousness. As Agastya spoke, a strange and wondrous thing occurred. The very air seemed to vibrate with an otherworldly energy, and the assembly was filled with an expectant hush. And then, as if summoned by the rishi's words, the skies opened up and the rains poured down in abundance. Indra himself had been moved to action, his 1,000 eyes shining with a newfound respect for Agastya's unyielding spirit. The assembly erupted into joyous acclaim, their voices rising like a mighty chant to the heavens, and at the center of it all stood Agastya, his heart aglow with an inner light that seemed to illuminate the very fabric of existence. His was a triumph, not just over external circumstances, but over the deepest recesses of his own being. As the rains continued to fall, the assembly began to disperse, each one returning to their respective duties and obligations. But Agastya remained, his eyes shining with an unwavering commitment to the path he had chosen. For in that moment he knew that he was not just a rishi, but a living embodiment of the very principles he sought to uphold. And so as the great sacrifice drew to a close, Agastya's companions approached him once more. We have been highly gratified with the words thou hast uttered, they said, but we do not wish that the penances should suffer any diminution. And in response, Agastya spoke words of wisdom and compassion, his voice carrying on the wind like a benediction.